Us Thursday, May the 6th, 2021 for VC Ag Today. We're pleased to be joined this morning by Dr. Katie Payne, our Applied Forage System Specialist out of the Southern Piedmont Agricultural Research and Extension Center. So thank you so much, Dr. Payne, for joining us this morning. Topic of discussion we're going to focus on is growing award-winning hay. Dr. Payne's going to talk to us a little bit about a program that's available for hay testing and also a little competition to try to determine some of the better hay in southeastern part of the United States. So just going to share some updates for hay production for those of you that are cattle or forage producers. Livestock production. So just before we get started this morning, again, thank everybody for joining us. Just as a few housekeeping notes, if you do have questions or comments throughout the presentation today, if you would please enter those into the chat window, we'd be happy to address those at the end of the presentation. Also, if you would, please remain muted throughout Dr. Payne's presentation just to avoid any background noise or disruptions. And then we'll open it up at the end for any questions or discussion that may arise. So without further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Payne, and appreciate you joining us this morning.
Good morning. It's great to be with you all this morning. And there's really not a better time to start talking about making high quality hay. So we can start with that. You all can see the big screen.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, we'll jump right into it. When we're looking at producing high quality hay, there's really 4 stages that you need to focus on. The first is when we're actually growing the crop, getting that ready for that harvest and turning it into hay. So we'll focus a little bit on that. Harvesting, the actual cutting, getting it ready to cure, then baling. And then another important stage is how are we storing that hay before it gets to the animal. Sorry. So the first forage production, we want to first make sure that we're soil testing every 1 to 2 years for hay fields. You can see that our forage crops, because we're harvesting those and not grazing those, we're removing nutrients from that field that aren't being recycled back through the animal. So as you can see, most people think of nitrogen being taken up by these forage crops, but potassium is also a very important crop that is taken up a lot by these crops that need to be replenished. And when we think about nutrient management in hay fields, it's often best to split up these applications throughout the growing season, doing an application at the beginning of the season, and then perhaps applying smaller doses throughout the growing season after each cutting, so we are replenishing these nutrients that are being taken up by the hay. And some other things that are important in terms of really getting your forages high quality while they're still growing is looking at agronomic practices such as weed control. You don't want those lower quality weeds in your hay crop. Also looking at pest control. So you can get pest damage, can greatly reduce forage quality as well. I'll just briefly talk about forage species selection. I won't go through individual forage species, but make sure that what you're growing is adapted to your region, your climate, and also adapted to your soil. you may want to produce the highest quality forage out there, but if it doesn't grow in your region, it's going to give you more headaches than it's worth. So if you're in a shallow, poorly drained area, even though alfalfa may be one of the most lenient in terms of forage quality, it's not worth the headache of trying to get it established in an area where it's not going to do its best to begin with. And also make sure that the forage crops that you're growing are capable of meeting your production goals in terms of, is this forage going to produce the forage quality that I need for growing beef steers or milking dairy cows? Or you can back it off if you're just trying to sustain dry cows through the winter. And also with yield, applying a lot of inputs and fertilizer, if you're creating a lot more yield than you are going to use or you don't plan to sell, could that potentially go to waste? And that can also play a part in the storage process as well. But just to show you that although there is a lot of talk about legumes being the highest quality, and it's true that they can reach up to higher digestibility than some of our warm season annual grasses and such. But if you're harvesting at the right time and you're maximizing where these crops have the highest nutritive value, there are windows where you can produce high quality forage that is similar to other forage species. But like I mentioned, these legumes, cool season annual grasses, they do have a larger window in the higher digestibility ranges. So when we look at when we're cutting, you may feel the urge to let it grow a little bit longer to get higher yields. But what we see is when that plant starts to mature, it's growing more cell wall content. And because it's growing more cell wall content, it's reducing digestibility. And also, it's going to start putting its nutrients towards the formation of seeds. So you're going to see lowering amounts of crude protein. All those nutrients are going to start going away from the leaves and going towards seed production. So while you may be getting higher yields from that forage as it matures, the quality goes down pretty quick. And the growth stage at cutting is the most important factor when you're determining when to cut your forage for hay. This was just a study that showed that as they prolonged the wait time to cut, you can see the different growth stages. Going from vegetative to late bloom, the digestibility decreased from 63% down to 51%. So again, we're seeing the more mature that plant is, the less digestible it is. An important part of making hay, as we mentioned, was growing at the correct growth stage for the highly nutritive forage. But we also want to try to cut no lower than 4 inches when we're cutting hay. And that plays in part, I'm sure everyone's heard the term grass grows grass. So that is, the more residue we leave on the ground, the more actual plant tissue that's left there, the faster that plant is going to recover and start to regrow. And also by cutting at a little higher height, we're going to reduce the ash content. We don't want to scalp the ground, get some dirt in there, and that can cause some problems as well. We want to try to mow early in the day, and that's really just maximizing more drying time for that hay. And also when you're using, when you have summer annuals and legumes that tend to have a thicker stem on those plants, you want to try to use a conditioner on your mower that can help break those stems to help them dry faster. So when we're cutting and curing hay, our biggest objective is to get that plant down to the dry matter that we want as fast as we can. So here we can see the conditioner rolls the stems through that and helps break down that stem. And we also, to help dry down those plants, we want to create wider swaths when we're raking to get more surface area, because the more surface area we have, the more it's exposed to air and wind to help dry those plants down. So, like I mentioned, our main objective in this process is getting it down to those moisture levels, but we also have to make sure that we're doing each step at a certain moisture level as well. So you usually want to rake plants anywhere from 40 to 50% moisture, get those into that swath. By doing this, we're reducing leaf loss, because as it gets drier, you're more likely to get leaf shatter on those plants. And when you're handling plants with machinery, then it's likely to increase that leaf shatter. And baling for hay, we want to try to get down to 18 to 20% moisture. At this moisture, we're also reducing leaf loss. Moisture in hay is not good. Any higher than 20%, and you can start to get microbial growth in that hay, which can increase mold growth in those hay bales, and can also start a Maillard reaction, which can lead to hay fires. But the greatest losses occur when making hay, occur during harvest. And here, because of the leaf loss, we see, because we are harvesting at drier moisture contents, upward of up to 30% dry matter losses in this stage. So this just shows that as our moisture is decreasing, that with hay we are increasing dry matter losses. Now, if we're making baled silage, baleage, that does have, because we're baling at higher moisture levels, between 40 and 65% moisture, there are fewer losses during harvest, and most of those losses come during storage. So there are some hay preservatives that you can use. There's chemical treatments that are used to increase the rate of drying. Some open the stomata of the plant to help dry faster. There are some that there are different ways to inhibit microbial activity. Some are acid-based. You can also use urea to help increase the acidity. But this can allow you to bale at a slightly higher moisture content. And nowadays the balers can contain moisture content sensors that kind of keep track of what that moisture content is to adjust for those hay preservatives. And so like I mentioned, there are ways to reduce storage losses as well. You really want to try to get those hay bales up off the ground if possible. And it's always better to line up your hay bales from end to end. Try to get them covered. And the best method, of course, is to store them in a shed to reduce those storage losses. And here was a study that showed that when we're storing those hay bales in a conventional shed, we're looking at dry matter losses of about 5%. Whereas when we're stacking hay on the ground, not covered, you can lose up to 35% of your bale. That's 35% losses of everything you just made in the field. And so here's a bale that was out, had been subjected to rain and everything. And when the outer 6 inches of a bale is damaged, you're losing about 30% of that bale, just wasted forage. So now we've made our hay, we've got it stored. You come by and you think, hey, this looks like really good hay, but can you really rely on how that hay looks to determine if it is high quality hay? No. So the best way to determine if you do have high quality hay is to get a forage test. You want to make sure that you're sampling from the round side of the bale. That way you're not collecting a sample from one place in the field, and you're getting a more representative sample. Make sure that you're getting samples from different bales as well from each harvest. So just kind of wrap things up, I wanted to give like the high points. Make sure you're getting your soil tested and your hay fields every 1 to 2 years, because we're not recycling those nutrients. Biggest thing is to harvest at the appropriate maturity level for that species. Get your moisture contents right during curing and baling. And get those bales off the ground and covered. And of course, forage test. So if we've got all this covered, we should have a pretty good crop for our animals. And so now I'd like to mention, we think we have a pretty good crop, and now we're going to enter it into the Southeast Hay Contest. So in 2021, is the 17th annual Southeastern Hay Contest. It's in conjunction with the Sunbelt Ag Expo in Moultrie, Georgia. This started as a way for extension specialists and extension agents to really get the word out to producers to start looking at their forage quality and their hay, and to start to try marketing based on forage value. So the contest is open to 13 states in the southeastern U.S. There are 7 categories that can be entered. You have warm season perennial grass hay, such as Bermuda grass, Bahia grass. A cool season perennial grass hay. Here we have tall fescue, orchard grass. Perennial peanut hay. Perennial peanut doesn't grow much north of eastern Alabama, so we don't have much chance of entering in perennial peanuts. We do have a chance for alfalfa hay, mixed annual grass, or other hay. There is a grass baleage category and a legume baleage category. And all of the mixed species baleage would go into the legume baleage category. But the entry fee is $22 per sample. $20 covers the forage test and a nitrate analysis, and a $2 entry fee into the contest. And when you think about it, sending a sample into this contest is actually cheaper than sending it to other labs, which may be $10 to $20 more expensive per sample. But the winners in each category, first place gets $150 cash prize, second gets $100, third place gets $75. And then the producer who has the overall highest RFQ, relative forage quality, is an index to measure forage quality and takes into account digestibility. That's how all of the samples in the contest are ranked. Gets a $1,000 cash prize and their choice of using a brand new Massey Ferguson rake or disc mower for the 2022 growing season. So it is a good opportunity to get your forage tested, and we do encourage producers to go through their extension agent, because it is very extension based, to come out and help collect your forage sample and get them submitted through Virginia Tech Forage Extension. We keep the display samples just in case we have a regional winner. But you can find more information and all of the contest rules at sehaycontest.com. And in 2020 was Virginia's first year in participating in the Southeastern Hay Contest. And we had 18 samples submitted out of the 360 that were submitted throughout the 13 states. And of those 18 samples, 3 of them were in the top 3 finalists within their category. So we had Brian Johnson from Moonshot Farm in McKinney. He, with his alfalfa hay, had an RFQ of 268. That is pretty good alfalfa hay. and he actually won the entire contest. So he, they came, they, the Sunbelt Ag Expo was canceled last year, and not a lot of people traveled for the awards that were held at the American Forage and Grassland Council ceremony. So they brought him up the big check up to McKinney, and he got to choose. I think the um, he chose the mower um, to use for the year. But with that, I think it's a great opportunity to work with your producers and get agents and producers involved in getting the word out about forage quality and trying to build um, a market that's based on forage quality. So with that, I'll take any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Payne. Appreciate you joining us this morning. Great presentation, a lot of good information, really timely for forage producers this spring. Any questions for Dr. Payne this morning? I don't see anything in the chat window, but if anyone has questions, please feel free to go ahead and unmute yourselves and ask those, or type them in the chat window.
Hey, good morning, Robbie. This is George Sidner in Richmond County. Good morning, Dr. Payne. Hope you can hear me. I have a couple of questions. I think your presentation was really helpful to me as a small cattle grower. I just recently cut a mix of oats and clover for hay. The hay was very nice, but I did have a lot of clover leaf shatter, and a lot of the bloom heads, I guess, got beat off with the tedder trying to get it dried properly. So first of all, I'd like to ask if it's possible to get a copy of the slides for my own record. And then secondly, with all due respect, everything you talked about is possible with the right management. So
Right.
it makes it look easy. However, I think the big problem, at least for me, is managing the impacts of weather.
Right.
So, you know, if there was a way, or if you have some recommendations about what happens if you get rain on the hay, what is the impact to the protein levels of digestibility if you have hay that's been rained on from, say, 1/10 of an inch to an inch? What are some of the techniques that one should use to try to salvage hay when it's, you know, bad weather? Where can you help us in those areas where we don't have good control of all of these management levers that you showed us today?
Right. So I'll address the rain situation first. I mean, the best thing you can do is try to be prepared. I know forecasts aren't always accurate. Be ready to have a plan in place. You can use some of those preservatives if you do see rain coming, so you can get those baled a little bit wetter. If you know someone or have the capability of producing baleage instead of hay, that allows you to get that forage harvested between 40 and 65% moisture. So you can get that done faster in case of you see rain is coming. In terms of damage from rain, rain can reduce the nutrient contents leaching out in those plants. I can't give you a confident answer in how much is leached out from 1/10 of an inch of rain to an inch of rain just off the top of my head, but that's something I can look into and try to get back to you on. But was that everything that you asked?
Yeah, that's some good information. I appreciate it. And, I think part of the problem is making decisions, as you said, about what's the best hay for your area, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
grass hay seems to be much simpler and much easier to manage than a legume or a heavy stalk like a oat or millet hay. But I think too, it is a function of what fits best into your, hay rotational program for the land that you have in hay. Could you speak to what hay recommendations you would have for the Northern Neck area in say typically sandy loam soil?
In terms of what species?
Yes.
Okay. Where exactly is that?
Richmond County in the Warsaw area.
Okay. So you're probably more cool season based, right?
Correct.
Correct. So you can use tall fescue. I would recommend a improved novel variety because tall fescue is a jack of all trades, really. You can use other. Timothy is a good hay crop. Generally not recommended for pastures as it doesn't handle trampling too well on a regular basis. But orchard grass and towards Richmond County has orchard grass persisted very well around there?
I've used a lot of orchard grass in the past. I've kind of got away from it currently because the last few plantings that I had didn't seem to hold up well at all in the summer heat. And I think that's partly my fault for probably cutting it too short, and partly maybe the variety wasn't, really a robust variety. But I like orchard grass because I think it makes wonderful hay and it's pretty tolerant weather-wise. It dries pretty quick and it doesn't seem to be too catastrophic if it does rain on it a little bit. So that would be kind of my go-to choice. I haven't tried any tall fescue, but maybe that's another option.
Mm-hmm.
I look at those as probably similar in technique as far as drying time and handling, beatability, if you will, with the equipment. I noticed you didn't mention drying methods like tedding or fluffing. What is your opinion of that? Are those good techniques to help dry down, or do they destroy the hay more than they add value?
I think it can add value, especially when you're trying to get it dry as quick as possible. But I wouldn't recommend tedding once you get below 40% moisture, because that you're really going to start seeing leaf shatter. And if you're doing alfalfa or legume hay, then you're really going to start seeing those trifoliate leaves come off.
Can you advise me on the best way to determine moisture in the field when you're out? I just pick the hay up and look at it and try to determine, by feel what the relative moisture content might be. Is there a more accurate way to do that?
You can take it, if you have an old microwave, there's a microwave method that we can find information on to kind of determine that. There are expensive forage moisture instruments, but really the microwave method may be the quickest. There are some who use a ring test, like you wring it out like a washcloth. That's kind of more perceptive than being truly accurate. I believe there are some who use moisture probe out in the field, but that can be pretty variable too.
I got you. Yeah, that's interesting. I would like to at least learn more about the microwave method. I'm sure my wife would appreciate that. So maybe a thought. Let's see if I could get your email address or something, I guess later, or from Stephanie or maybe Trent or Robbie. Certainly you could send me the slides and maybe the microwave test information. So, hey, Katie, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your information. Your presentation was very good, I thought. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for your questions and challenging me a little bit. I need that. So, but I'll make sure that Stephanie can get those slides for you, and we can get you that information.
Thank you very much.
All right, and any other questions this morning? All good information. I know from my experience, sometimes if folks are trying to raise alfalfa or some of those finer leaf leguminous species, there is a piece of equipment. It's called a merger, and they can use those to try to avoid some of that shattering when they try to rake it. It specialized for that. Any other questions, comments? All good discussion. Hopefully everybody has good weather this spring to contribute to a nice forage crop. All right, well, I don't hear anything else or see anything in the chat window. So again, we'd just like to take a second and thank Dr. Payne for joining us this morning. Thank you as always for providing great information and resources. We will be sharing this recorded presentation on our playlist. The link is there listed on the screen. You can also reach out to any of the ag agents on the call this morning, and we'd be happy to get you a copy of that as well. Also, just like to take a second and ask folks, if you're with us, to please evaluate the program at the link that you see there on the screen. Just takes a minute of your time to provide some feedback, as well as opportunity to put in submissions for future topics to have on VC Ag Today. So we encourage folks to do that if they will. As always, I'd like to thank the team of agents that make the effort possible: Stephanie Romelchek, Laura Maxine, Mike Broadus, Trent Jones, and Frank Long. So thank you to all the agents that make this effort possible on Thursdays. And we appreciate everybody joining us. We will not have a session coming up in the next couple of weeks. The next thing that we are promoting will be the 2021 Virginia Small Grains Field Day, held at the Eastern Virginia AREC in Warsaw. The registration link for that, Stephanie has just posted into the chat window, but you can see that there on your screen as well. It's on May the 20th from 8 to 12 p.m. Looking at research from Virginia Tech Small Grains Breeding Program, Smart Farm Initiative. So encourage folks to come out to that event if you're interested in small grain here in this area. So if you would like more information on that, please contact your local ag agent, and we'd be happy to provide that information. So appreciate everyone joining us this morning. Thank you again, Dr. Payne. A pleasure as always. And if you have questions, please let us know. And we hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday and a happy hay season this spring.